One thing I'll say about being treated like absolute garbage by the human race for 43 years is that you sure as heck compile a lot of good stories. Today is no different because I'm Linda, this is Linda's World, and this Storytime with Linda edition is all about how I was dumped by a guy because I caught a cold. You heard me. You want to know more? Of course you do. That's ridiculous. Well, then stay tuned because this Storytime with Linda starts right now. There is an awful lot of content on YouTube designed to teach you how to live your best life, achieve your dreams, and be a happy camper. I know because I watch them. But in all my 43 years of life, and in all my 15 or so years of watching YouTube videos, I've yet to see a channel that's a blueprint on what not to do. A channel that tells you how to avoid stupid mistakes or not be held back by your fear or whatever, or just serve as an example of what not to do in life if you're seeking happiness. That's where Linda's World comes in. So, if you're just a casual viewer, or if you're just finding this video by sheer accident and you don't know who the heck I am, well, I suggest that you subscribe down below so you can be a member of Linda's World and hit the notification bell while you're there so you don't miss any upcoming videos on this channel. Storytime with Linda is just getting warmed up, and besides that, we've got all our Self-Care Sundays videos, all our vlogs, and so forth, and believe me, you will know what not to do by watching a couple of my videos, and you'll be entertained while you're there. So, as I'm fond of saying in story times, on with the tale. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the title you clicked on is not hyperbole. I was broken up with because I caught a cold. I swear to God. Now, if you call up this person, this happened almost 20 years ago, so I doubt he'd even think of it if you asked him this question, But if you were like, hey, did you really break up with Linda because she caught a cold? He'd probably tell you yes, but the answer is a little more involved than that, and so that's, of course, where our story time begins. So I'd like to set a scene for you. It was the fall of 2002. I had been teaching for 2 years. It was the beginning of my 3rd year of teaching. And Sophia the dog was a little baby. She was not even 1 yet. And she was cute, and my house was cute, and I was still young and good looking. I was a little heavy, but whatever. And I had friends, and I went out at night, and things were great. My life was kicking. I was doing what people do when they're 25 years old, And so because that was true, there was one thing missing, and that was male companionship. So I am what I like to call a failed heterosexual. I have tried to enlist male company since I was 12. And every time I do, I met with the most ridiculous controversy or people who are sociopaths or just ridiculous stuff. My friend John always tells me, you need better friends. And you know what, John? You're right. And so basically, it was really hard for me to meet anybody at all. And so when I met a person and he didn't exactly live up to my expectations, I always thought of the line that I love so much in Valley of the Dolls. Patty Duke was standing there, and the guy goes,
I know our agent. I can tell you exactly what he'll say. Take whatever crumbs are offered.
Take whatever crumbs are offered. So I took a crumb. I took a crumb who I'm going to rename. Those people who are closest to me know exactly who I'm talking about in this video if you're watching. But if you're not, I'm going to call this man Rick. He seems like a Rick. He feels like a Rick. I don't know why. He just seems like a Rick. And also, we all know what that rhymes with. So, Rick and I were 3 years apart in age. He was 22. And I do not do younger. It's not I don't oppose it as a rule or anything. It's just my personal interests and my moral code and my tastes and stuff like that speak to an older person, older than me. So, in any case, I was kind of hesitant to do this because Rick and I had a problem in that we worked together. And so it was it was a situation where it was going to be on blast, if we weren't careful. Of course, little did I know 2 things, which was 1, Rick was really, really embarrassed to be dating me because of the reputation that I had in my place of employment, not for being a hoe, but being crazy. And so everyone was like, ew, Linda. So he was embarrassed. So he wanted to keep it under wraps. And 2, it was a miserable failure keeping it under wraps because everybody knew anyway because it was obvious AF. Okay, so in any case, there Rick and I were. So we got together officially right before Thanksgiving. And we were together for 2 months with a little spillover. January is when the cold happened. So let me just tell you the thing. Okay, so now Rick was an interesting fellow. He was the kind of person who would insist that you go out for a meal and then complain when you ate it and you were fat. Rick was the kind of person who would not speak to you for an entire 2 hours sitting there next to you, and when you spoke and you said, "What's the matter?" he'd tell you you were crazy because you were inquiring about his silence. Rick was the kind of person who didn't want to be seen with you, but didn't understand why you didn't want to show him around. Rick was the person who went with me to the Outback one night, and as I was building a card house, you know, you make the 2 triangle sides and whatever, with the coasters, knocked them down, said there was no foundation in a dead serious manner. And then when I said, "You're freaking me out," he said, "Stop complaining. They're only coasters. Why are you being so serious?" Rick was the kind of person who drove me to the state where I was questioning my own sanity. And I know I don't have a lot of it, but I'm not crazy in the way that he said, you know. So, of course, now we've painted a picture of Rick. So the holiday season approached, and we did some Christmas shopping, and we went to Costco because he had a membership, and I remember getting really excited about the Costco muffins, and I bought a whole bunch of them. They're so freaking good. Oh my God, the apple cinnamon ones, to this day, I love them. And we're in the car, and I was like a little bit upset about the fact that I'd spent like $73, and $73 in 2002 money is like $200. And I kind of didn't have it, and so I was like complaining about money, and he goes, "Well, maybe if you got off your ass and stopped watching the Golden Girls and got a second job, you wouldn't be complaining about money." But that's not what we're talking about. I'm just painting a picture of Rick. So then Rick caught a cold, and he had a bit of a sore throat, and he was driving me home from work, and he was like, you know, all scratchy, whatever, and I had to go to Rite Aid to get something. So I went to Rite Aid, and he's like, "All right, I'll wait." You know, and I went there, and Rite Aid I saw had something that I thought he might like. Luden's honey lemon cough drops. I use those. He used those. This is my favorite kinds. If I'm using a cough drop, that's what I use. I used to eat them for candy when I was a kid. And they had these little tiny stockings. They had red ones and green ones, and that had your names on them. So they were like literally like the size of my palm. And so I was like, oh my God, ding ding, light bulb. Cute idea. I'm going to go and make him a stocking filled with cough drops because he's sick. So I got my purchase, and I came outside, and I stood in the vestibule of the store, and I like mocked up the stocking. I opened the bag of cough drops and shoved them in there and like made him. And I was like, look, I was like, "Merry Christmas, feel better." Right? And he was like, "Oh my God, that's really cute. That's really nice of you." And he was like, that's a cool idea. He hung the stocking from his rearview mirror. And so Christmas was had. So he got better, but then I got a cold. And then I got better, and then he got a cold. And it was the good old-fashioned winter thing that happens, where you trade the same sneeze back and forth with your loved one for like months, right? And so finally, at the beginning of January of 2003, I caught myself another cold. We'd all been well for a while, but one day I woke up and I was like, well, there it is. So I had to take, there's a thing when you're getting your teaching license called the Child Abuse Prevention Workshop. You have to go and sit for this workshop and collect your certificate to prove that you've been trained to recognize the symptoms of child abuse and neglect, because you're a mandated reporter, because you're in front of minors all day, right? From K through 12, you have to do this. So it was at Brooklyn College, which is not like even like that's close to his house, not close to my house. But he had a car and I didn't, and he was my boyfriend. So, like, drive me. It's 3 degrees. That'd be great. So we did. And I sat in this child abuse workshop, and I was like, you know, and I felt like absolute crap. And I was like, and it just sucked. You know, it was just winter. And so I went home. That was a Tuesday. Saturday night, my brothers were going to go to the movies, and they wanted to see if I want to come along. We lived in the same block. When I moved out, my parents lived at one house, and I lived 3 doors down, and so it was great because it was free laundry. And so my brothers were like standing in the street, and they're like, "Are you going to come?" I was like, "Yeah, just give me a moment," because my phone is ringing. My phone rang, and it was Rick. Okay, so Rick wanted to tell me that he's been thinking things over, and the fact that I caught a cold again, after we had all been sick in December, told him all he needed to know about not wanting to continue the relationship. Flabbergasted and horrified and not quite understanding what the hell he was talking about, I was like, well, what do you mean? That's a logical question. And Rick said that it was because he was thinking that a person who gets sick to that level, and a person who isn't able to fight the winter illnesses that most humans do get, it speaks to my character that I don't take proper precautions and I have weakness, that I will allow myself to be ill. And he's looking for a person who could potentially be the mother of his children. And he doesn't want to waste his time with a person who has a poor immune system, with a person who is susceptible to a virus, and with a person who doesn't take their health seriously enough to avoid catching a cold. He said, I want you to think about the future. In 10 years, when you catch a cold, you're going to be incapable of taking care of the kids. You're going to pass your cold on to your kids. And they're not your kids, they're my kids. And I don't want my kids catching a cold because of you. And yeah, I'm not kidding. This is exact dialogue. I have like a photographic memory. I remember exact dialogue from like 1979. So like, I remember this. And so flabbergasted and horrified, I was like, well, I just got dumped. Holy shit. I didn't know what quite to do. So I went with my brothers to the movies, and I don't know. And then later on that week, I had to take the violence prevention workshop. That's another workshop that you take when you have to make sure that if like a fight occurs in your school, that you know the proper protocol about calling school security and the dean and whatever. So I had to sit through that and get my certificate. And it was like literally like 3, I'm not kidding when I say it was 3 degrees outside. And he drove me to the thing. He's like, listen, I already promised to drive you. He's like, like I'll do you a solid. I'll still take you because it's cold. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he goes, well, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be with someone who has a cold. It's just that I think that you're owed a trip to the college because I promised. Any self-respecting person would have taken a cab, but I don't have self-respect, and so I went in his car, and I was like trying not to like sneeze and stuff like that, and like show him that I'm better. I was like, no, I don't have a cold, And I sat through the violence prevention workshop, and everyone thought I was crying because I had a cold, because that was when the tear, like I get this thing where like my sinuses like shoot up my eyeballs and like I tear. On my 40th birthday, I had the same thing, and my mother thought I was crying that I was 40, and I was like, no, I promise I have a cold. So in any case, I sat through the violence prevention workshop, and I came home by bus, and it was freezing outside, and my mother made me pancakes with boysenberry syrup, and that was great. And those kits you get at the store with like syrups and Smuckers and stuff like that for Christmas? We'd been gifted a pancake set, and it was great. And it took my mind off my troubles until I got a phone call from Rick 1 week after the phone call that I was broken up with because I had a cold. And he goes, listen, he had this ex-girlfriend that he wasn't over. And so one day in the car, like in the holiday season, he had said, if she came back to me right now and you were here and she was there, my choice would be clear. And I was like, well, that's really cute. Well, he was calling me up just to say that he was thinking back on shit that he'd said to me in the month of December. And that if the girl, let's call her Melinda, were standing right there and I was standing right there, his choice would be clear. The other way around. And he couldn't rest until I knew that. And he wanted to reiterate the fact that even though he told me he loved me on Christmas Day, he wanted to make sure that I knew that he was taking it back. And I kind of asked, like, well, why would you, like, why can't you just let it rest? Like, why can't you tell a person this? Like, why must you call me? Can't you let it lie? And he was like, well, I couldn't rest until I got this off my chest. And I don't know why you had to go and catch a cold and ruin everything. And now I understand who I'm dealing with, and that's why I'm electing not to deal with it anymore. And if you make this weird for us at work, I will have you fired in 2 seconds. So we were broken up. I called my friend to complain about it. I've spoken of this in a previous video. The video is how to spot like a bad friend. 5 signs you need to break up with your friend. I called her. We spoke about this from 9 to 9:30. And then until 3:30 in the morning, we spoke of her problems. Because, I know fabulous people. And that was that. And I didn't make it difficult at work because I cold or not, am a person of character. And I believe in separating your business and your personal life very much. In fact, anyone knows I'm a huge compartmentalizer. Like, I don't drag my school to my house to my school. And years later, a mutual friend of ours who also worked at the school said that he had gone to the principal to complain about me, that I was making things awkward, but it was squelched because they thought he was wrong. And I never knew anything about it because it didn't go far, because I hadn't done anything wrong, so there was no investigation into the matter, because you can't investigate an innocent man or woman. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my story. That is the tale of how I was broken up with by a person because I caught a cold. And it makes me, to this day, like, this happens, like, it's 2020, so, like, I was broken up with, like, technically it was 17 and a half years ago that I was broken up with by a person for having a cold. And, like, to this day, I hide when I'm sick from any man, because don't want to experience January of 2003 ever again. One day I'll tell you about my insomnia and all the things that befell me during that year, but that's not what this story time is about. One tragedy at a time, Linda. It's okay. So I'm going to instead go, and I'm going to say, for the record, that I dug up the shirt today that says, I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it. It's the first ever piece of Ariana Grande merch I ever got, and I love it, and that's the 7 Rings lyric, and that's, like, in my top 5 songs of hers, and I'm going to go now and, I guess, play some music, because now I'm in the mood, and I'm going to just rejoice in the fact that it's spring, that it's not the winter of 2003, and I don't have a cold, and I don't know Rick anymore. I'm good now. Don't be me. Oh my God, just whatever you do, don't be me. That's all I have to say about that. Later, Gators.